Let me turn to Kiyoto Ido, the Vice Chairman of the Institute for International Economic Studies and the former Executive Director of Bank of Japan. You have the floor, my dear friend.
Thank you, Chairman. Today, I would like to begin by discussing Abenomics. In 2002, when Prime Minister Abe became Prime Minister of Japan, he aimed to pull Japan out of deflation and achieve stable economic growth. Abenomics is based on the three arrows of monetary easing, flexible fiscal policy, and growth strategy. Growth strategy enhances economic growth in the medium to long term, but those involving structural reform require time for results to be generated, and moreover, have negative impacts on the economy in the short run. Therefore, while Japan waited for its growth strategy to become effective, it had to harness fiscal and monetary policies to support near-term economic activities as it advances structural reform. In 2013, the Bank of Japan introduced quantitative and qualitative monetary easing, so-called QQE. In January this year, it also introduced negative interest rates, followed by yield curve control in September. These monetary easing strategies provoked a drastic weakening of the yen and rising asset prices, including stock and real estate prices. However, from the perspective of real economics, despite the increase in housing investment resulting from lower housing loan interest rates, the impact on consumption and investment was limited. When future economic growth and demand growth are uncertain, private companies will be hesitant to make new capital investments, and therefore, in the end, it is most important to secure public confidence in future economic growth. Given the large amounts of internal reserves that Japanese companies have accumulated, QQE can only promise limited effects. Monetary easing measures have had certain positive effects, as I explained to you, on the Japanese economy. However, if we are to put the Japanese economy on a sustainable growth path, growth strategy-led structural reform is indispensable in the long run. So the Japan revitalization strategy has been revised every year following its initial formulation, and the main focus of the strategy is on innovation and measures to address the declining birth rate. Japan has the fastest aging population in the world, just as Mr. Ha also mentioned. And this is one of the main factors contributing to a declining potential growth rate. The current potential growth rate is estimated to be 0.5%, which does not promise, dramatic growth in the future. From this perspective, the government currently aims to boost the birth rate up to 1.8. It is implementing policies to improve working conditions for women and policies to enhance the labor participation of women and the elderly. An aging population with a declining birth rate increases social security spending, including pensions and nursing care costs. As a result, government debt has reached approximately 230% against the GDP. This has aroused a sense of insecurity towards the future of pensions and healthcare, which is one of the reasons why consumer spending remains stagnant. Japan's unemployment rate stands at 3.0%, which means that its labor market is nearly at full employment. However, in recent years, the increasing number of irregular or non-full-time workers become a major issue. While labor participation of women and the elderly have increased irregular employment, young people in irregular employment are slowing down consumption. Irregular employment of younger generation will lessen opportunities for training, thus reducing potential labor productivity. We need to continue, therefore, promoting the regular employment of young people. And Japanese companies have been performing well under Abenomics, supported by low crude oil prices, monetary easing, and a weak yen. In particular, corporate earnings have marked record highs. However, many Japanese companies are taking a cautious approach in their management strategies because of the prolonged deflation and uncertain prospects of stable high growth. As a result, although companies have accumulated internal reserves, capital investment has been growing only very slowly, and the labor share is declining. In order to boost growth, it is essential that we increase consumption by improving productivity and wages. Now, I would like to turn to the financial reform. Next, I would like to briefly comment on financial reform. Lessons from the global financial crisis of 2008 have driven countries around the world to engage in comprehensive financial regulatory reform. I think highly of it, the fact that many items on the reform agenda have moved up from the designing phase to the implementation phase. Regulatory reform has played a contributing role in enhancing the robustness of the financial system to a certain extent. Now that we have an idea of the complete picture of financial reform, I believe that it is time to consider the following issues. The first issue is achieving both a stable financial system and sustainable economic growth. Should tight regulations discourage financial institutions from taking any risks, then they may no longer be able to fulfill the role of supplying the funds required for economic growth. The second issue is appropriately reallocating regulation and supervision role. As we have witnessed in terms of Japan's negative interest rate policy, financial institutions in Japan, and as well as Europe, are struggling amid low interest rates. The conventional approach of accumulating capital and collateral does not always work. So we must reconsider conventional supervisory framework and shift from so-called static regulation to dynamic supervision. And the third issue is stabilizing regulations. Regulatory reform has been a topic of continuous debate. But in the face of higher economic uncertainties, an indefinite regulatory framework may hinder the stabilization of the financial market and thus inhibit economic growth. We should now take the time to verify the achievements made up to present and before we discuss what steps to take in the next stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much indeed. And I have to say that the presentation of Abenomics that you made is probably one of the best I ever heard. So thank you very, very much.